Doctor Who has been around long enough to have gained mythical status, and wherever myths and legends are concerned, some things are always going to get misconstrued. And so it's not always easy to distinguish fact from fiction. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie with Who Culture, here with 10 lies about Doctor Who you probably believe. Number 10. Bernard Cribbins was always Donna's grandfather. The late, great Bernard Cribbins made his New Who debut in the 2007 Christmas special Voyage of the Damned as Donna Noble's grandfather, Wilfred Mott. Except it's not quite that simple. As written and filmed, Cribbins played an entirely different character with an entirely different name, Stan. It was only later that he became Wilf. The original plan for Series 4 was for Howard Atfield to return as Donna's father, Jeff, a role he originated in The Runaway Bride. However, when Atfield's health deteriorated, it became clear that a contingency plan was needed. Rather than recast Jeff, showrunner Russell T Davies opted to rewrite the part as Donna's grandfather and brought back Cribbins to play the role. But why the name change? Well, RTD thought that Wilf was a better name for a recurring character than Stan, and with Voyage of the Damned still a couple of months away from broadcast, this was easy enough to change. Hence why, in the finished episode, Cribbins is indeed credited as Wilfred Mott. Those wanting to find out more about how Stan became Wilf should check out RTD's acclaimed book, The Writer's Tale, which tells the story in real time. It really is a fascinating read. Number 9. The name Dalek came from an encyclopedia spine. How do you come up with the name of an iconic Doctor Who monster? By nicking it off a book spine, apparently. At least that's the story Dalek originator Terry Nation gave when asked how he devised a name for his most famous creations. According to a 1964 interview, Nation took inspiration from an encyclopedia volume which covered words beginning with D-A-L, Dal, through to words beginning with L-E-K, Lek, with a spine that literally read Dalek. But under scrutiny, this account began to fall apart, with some wondering whether such a spine could actually exist. After all, how many words in the English language begin with lek? In the end, Nation came clean, revealing that the encyclopedia anecdote was nothing more than a fabrication. A profound explanation to satisfy persistent journalists. And you've got to admit, it's a pretty good one. But the question remains, where did the name Dalek come from? Well, according to Nation's revised account, it simply rolled off the typewriter. Interestingly, the other key myth surrounding the Daleks' creation, that they were inspired by pepper pots, is in fact true. So it's not all a lie. Number 8. Kris Marshall was considered for the Doctor. It's January 2017, and Peter Capaldi has just revealed that Series 10 of Doctor Who will be his last. Around the same time, it's confirmed that Kris Marshall will be stepping down from his lead role in Death in Paradise. Coincidence? Well, Doctor Who fans definitely thought not. Of course, it was Jodie Whittaker, not Marshall, who ultimately became the 13th Doctor. But was his name ever on the cards? At the time, many believed so. The Mirror even ran a story claiming that Marshall had already joined the cast and would be making his debut during Series 10 itself. Even prior to this, Marshall's name was consistently brought up whenever a regeneration was imminent. In hindsight, it's pretty clear that this was a load of rubbish. Not least because Chris Chibnall has revealed that although Whittaker wasn't the only actor auditioned for the part, the 13th Doctor was always going to be female. But for the avoidance of any doubt, Marshall recently broke his silence, insisting that he's never been approached for Doctor Who, and that this long-standing rumour was simply a product of tabloid speculation. He even went as far as to admit that he's never actually watched an episode. Too far, Chris. Too far. If one thing's for sure then, it's that Marshall will probably never actually play the Doctor, despite some fans' insistence that he'd be a pretty good fit for the role. Number 7. Every Doctor had a sonic screwdriver. It's tempting to believe that, like the TARDIS and the Daleks, the sonic screwdriver has always been part of Doctor Who's DNA. But this simply isn't the case. In fact, the sonic wasn't introduced until the second Doctor's era, meaning the first Doctor missed out on it completely. Even the second Doctor only used it a handful of times, and only in the latter half of his era. It wasn't until the third Doctor's tenure that the sonic started appearing more regularly, becoming the stylish, multi-purpose gadget we know and love today. Then, having enjoyed a number of appearances across the 70s, the sonic was seemingly destroyed in the 1982 serial The Visitation, leaving the 5th Doctor without one for the majority of his era. The following 2 Doctors also went largely without, though the 7th acquired a screwdriver again sometime before his final story. Notwithstanding the 12th Doctor's brief rejection of the screwdriver in favour of sunglasses, the Sonic has been a staple of the show ever since. Although some fans would no doubt welcome another 80s-style hiatus, it seems unlikely that the Sonic will ever leave the Doctor's side again, not least because it is now one of the show's most merchandisable assets. Number 6. The Daleks were the show's first villains. As we've already established, not everything you read about the Daleks is true. They've been around for nearly as long as Doctor Who itself, and as such, there's a perception among more casual viewers that they were the first villains the Doctor ever faced. But while the Daleks were the first Doctor Who monster, they weren't the first Doctor Who antagonist. That unfortunate distinction belongs to Cal the Caveman, a character from the very first Doctor Who story, An Unearthly Child. Cal's goal was simple: to make fire, and thus prove himself as a worthy leader for the tribe of Gum. Too bad then that one of the first things the Doctor did upon arriving on Stone Age Earth was to light his pipe. And yes, you heard me right, the Doctor did indeed once own and smoke a pipe. Along the way, Cal murders the kindly cavewoman Old Mother, but justice is served when he is himself killed by fellow caveman Tsar. He's not the most iconic or groundbreaking villain, but Cal was just as deadly a threat as the Daleks in those early days, and deserves to be remembered as such. Number 5. Series 5 had an intentional fairy tale vibe. If you ask a Doctor Who fan to summarise Series 5 in one word, they'll probably say fairy tale, and it's not hard to see why. Matt Smith's Doctor is the most whimsical yet. His companion, Amelia Pond, has a name which even the Doctor admits is like a name in a fairy tale, and their memorable first meeting, the Doctor crash landing into Amelia's front garden, could easily be taken from the pages of a children's book. But the man in charge of the show at the time, Stephen Moffat, has since insisted that he didn't consciously go for a fairy tale vibe, arguing that this is a grotesque exaggeration of his version of Doctor Who. That's not to say that he disagrees with the fairy tale reading completely, or that it was completely coincidental. On the contrary, Moffat argues that the whole of Doctor Who is to some extent like a fairy tale, because that's the genre it most closely resembles. The way he describes it is, it's about a wizard in a magic box with a magic wand. So yes, it's probably a bit reductive to describe Series 5 as a fairy tale, though it does certainly give off that vibe. Number 4. The Doctor appears in every story. If there's one thing we can be certain about, it's that the Doctor appears in every episode of Doctor Who. Right? Well, that was likely the mindset that 60s viewers had going into Mission to the Unknown, the single-part prologue to the 12-part epic The Daleks' Master Plan. They would no doubt have been expecting the Doctor to crop up at any moment, and would no doubt have been confused when he didn't. Over the years, other stories have come close to not featuring the Doctor. The Doctor Light episodes of the 10th Doctor era, like Love and Monsters, Blink and Turn Left, being the most prominent examples. But Mission to the Unknown is, to date, the only story to lack them completely. It's all the more disappointing then that it's one of the episodes currently missing from the BBC archives. You can, however, experience it in recreated form thanks to the students of the University of Central Lancashire, who restaged the episode in 2019. Number 3. The TARDIS appears in every story. The TARDIS is the glue that holds the Doctor's adventures together. It gets them where they want or where they need to go. So, like the Doctor, you could reasonably expect it to show up in every story. But on the contrary, the TARDIS has been absent from a number of episodes over the years. The aforementioned Mission to the Unknown doesn't feature the Doctor, so naturally doesn't feature the TARDIS either. Likewise, we don't see the TARDIS in the Silurians, the Mind of Evil, and the Sea Devils, as these stories are set during the Third Doctor's exile, when he was forced to use earthly modes of transport. In Midnight, The Lie of the Land, and Ascension of the Cybermen, meanwhile, the Doctor has arrived to each story's setting via the TARDIS, but this has taken place off-screen. Last but not least, The Woman Who Fell to Earth is perhaps the most unique case of all, depicting a scenario where the Doctor and the TARDIS have been completely separated, with their eventual reunion saved for the following story. Number 2. Reverse the polarity of the neutron flow is a Third Doctor catchphrase. Doctor Who catchphrases are a funny thing. They often emerge by accident rather than by design, and are not always used as commonly as fans remember them to be. Case in point, few fans would dispute that the Third Doctor's favourite phrase was reverse the polarity of the neutron flow, despite the fact that he only said it once during his own era in the Sea Devils, and twice in total, the second instance being in the 5 Doctors. It would be somewhat more accurate to say that the Third Doctor's catchphrase is simply reverse the polarity, but even that phrase only appears in a few more serials. In fact, there are far more cases of the phrase being used by other Doctors in other eras. It's been said by the 5th, 10th, 11th, 12th and 13th Doctors, and and gone down in history as the ultimate example of Doctor Who technobabble. Quite how it managed to catch on after a literal handful of appearances is anyone's guess, but catch on it did, to the point where it is now as much a part of the Third Doctor's personality as capes, cravats, and frilly shirts. Number 1. Dr. Donna was always planned. From Bad Wolf to Torchwood to Saxon, Russell T Davies loved nothing more than littering each of his series with clues that would eventually be paid off in the finale. Series 4 was no different, with regular teases that planets were going missing, or clom, several cameos from Rose Tyler, and mentions of the Dr. Donna, which turned out to be a human Time Lord meta-crisis that marked the end of Donna Noble's time in the TARDIS. For such a crucial element of the series, you'd logically assume that the Dr. Donna mentioned by the Ood in Planet of the Ood was always meant to tee up Donna's tragic fate. But in reality, Davies only connected these two strands when the time came to write the finale. After settling on the meta-crisis subplot, Davies realised he could repurpose that Dr. Donna moniker and use it as a clever piece of foreshadowing, even though it originally wasn't meant as such. It's a great example of a coincidence being made into something more, and it also jives perfectly with the idea of the Ood being these almost omniscient beings. And know this, Dr. Donna, you will never be forgotten. And that concludes our list. If you think we missed any, then please do let us know in the comments below, and while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell so you never miss a Who Culture video ever again. Also, head over to Twitter and Instagram to follow us there, and I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with Who Culture, and in the words of Riversong herself, goodbye, sweeties.